Earth Central, where we go over the stories of the Earth heroes. And today I have a special guest, our dear partner, Anete Garoza, who is the Chief Climate Officer at 1 Million Tree Nation. I'm going to let Anete introduce herself.
Hi everyone, it's very exciting to be here. Thank you, Oli and Orbify, for inviting me. My name is Anete Garoza. I'm one of the co-founders of 1MT Nation. We are on a big mission to restore 1 million hectares of degraded land in Africa. I'm also an international climate lawyer helping different African countries to design their climate regulations. And on top of this all, I'm also ambassador of East Africa in a global impact investor network called TTI, Top Tier Impact.
Wow, that's a lot of really big credentials. But I would love to know and to understand how you chose the focus on this specific geography, so Africa in general and maybe East Africa specifically.
Yeah, so 1MTN, first of all, just a little bit explaining what we are doing. We are high quality carbon credit project developer. And as we are on a mission to restore degraded lands, we use a tool. Our tool is bamboo and implementing also different biodiversity management practices. So before 1MTN, I had my own legal firm back in Europe, and I was also doing similar projects in Europe for afforestation. And time went by, and I also met my business partner, Christian. We are in 1MTN together. And by discussing my doings in Europe, we just realized that actually the impact is not that big with the similar activities to what we did in Europe. And that's how we changed our focus. And at the moment, we are solely focusing on Africa. We are already operational in Uganda, and we see a lot of good developments through the voluntary carbon markets in the region to really scale up the climate action and different products in the market.
Gotcha. Do you think you can give us maybe like an overview of the overall state of the carbon market in Africa or maybe any other emerging market? And if you believe that East Africa can be labeled as an emerging market for carbon, for voluntary carbon projects?
Yeah, I would say that, of course, it's good that we are having this regional focus, and if we are talking about East Africa especially, because we also can see that in Africa in general, all the regions have different, I would say that state and development in the carbon markets, but in East Africa, I see a very good development. Of course, different countries have their different approaches to the climate regulations, but we have to understand that the voluntary carbon market is still new for them, for the public institutions, for the regulatory bodies, and they are trying really hard to understand the compliance mechanisms under the Paris Agreement, under their own country regulations, what they already have in place. And I think that the best thing about East Africa carbon markets is that they are very aligned with the public sector. They listen to the public sector and they listen also to the private sector. So these two sectors need to come up with the good framework, how really scale up the carbon markets. So I see actually a lot of great opportunities and also a good collaboration for the upcoming years.
Gotcha. So it sounds like it's driven a lot by the governments. I think, at least from my experience, it's not really the case in all of the different countries. Can you give me a little bit more of insight on that?
I would I would actually say that I wouldn't say that it's driven only by the government. I would mostly say that it's actually driven by the private sector. We see in each country there are very active movements through the climate networks, through different NGOs who are collecting different stakeholder opinions regarding what the issues are, what is basically stopping us, because the worldwide we see from different climate action forums, conferences, we are talking about all the same challenges, but which are the action steps? So that means that there's something stopping us, and we need to overcome the stop. And for this one, private sector plays a great role because we can have opinions from different stakeholders, of course, project developers, different technology providers. Africa, and especially East Africa, we are I would say that we, because I'm coming from Uganda, and I love to say that it's the East Africa carbon markets I'm deeply passionate about. That's why I'm saying and addressing as we. Um, we are in a great position. Digitalization is not there yet, but it will be. And we are on a path of digitalization in different sectors. So, meaning that we have to understand that also the public sector services, is it the land titles, is it soil data? We need to have this digital and technology approach so we can scale up the carbon markets. And in this phase, I think that it's the best case that the public sector invites private sector players, as for example Orbify, up to the discussion table to really discuss how we can, with the new technology, scale up these markets. Yes, digitalization is not there yet, but it could be. And how do we approach this way into the having technologies in place in East Africa?
Gotcha. I think I have immediately two follow-up questions because you mentioned challenges. And for example, we work with a lot of developers, specifically in Brazil, and we do know that one of the main challenges there is the I guess problems with the land ownership. So
Mm-hmm.
there have been so many cases where, for example, one piece of land is being claimed by multiple people. Let's put it this way. Is it something similar in East Africa, or can you list some other challenges that
Yes,
have been seen?
definitely.
Okay.
Definitely, these are the similarities, and that's why I'm saying that I see that these kind of issues could be de-risked if the land sector would be digital. That would not happen in this case. So land grabbing, title issues, not titled land. How we really make sure that the people who have been signed up for a carbon project really is the like ultimate beneficiaries.
Mm-hmm.
So back in our compliance in our company, we do it in a very, I would say, strict, straightforward way. We are leasing the titled land, also
Mm-hmm.
opening up the boundaries and other surveillance, registering the title. Yes, it's more costly. Yes, it takes more time, but we need to make sure that we don't end up in the land issues in the future. And I would say that this is also the reason why the outgrower scheme models for the carbon projects at the moment are very risky still. In East Africa, we need to be very, very careful about that because land issues are real.
When you say outgrowing, what does that mean specifically?
I would say that, for example, these are like two examples. One MTN, we are operating on a title, then we carry our operations for the leasehold period time from end to end. We plant ourselves, we manage the plantation ourselves, and then when the project ends, we are giving back the full forest to the landowner, and they can maintain it for more than like the same time period. Because, for example, bamboo plantations, if healthy managed, they can last up to 100 years. Then there are different schemes where, for example, different small landowners want to plant on their own land, on their own costs. We are just providing them with carbon project development service, and they can join our full project. But of course, the most of the carbon credits will be theirs. So this is what we are calling the outgrower schemes, when we are not carrying out all operations ourselves, but where the landowners or small landowners, big landowners are doing that on them. Yes, it's more risky outgrower model because we need to make sure that they really own the land, how their operations are carried out, how they are taking care of the plantation, etc. Yeah.
Gotcha. And basically, the second follow-up question is associated with the term that you're using, digitalization, because I see it as kind of like a twofold. So on the one hand, I assume we can talk about what we now call satellization, as in using the satellite technology in everything that pertains with carbon tracking, carbon project tracking. But then on the other hand, I also have background in blockchain because I used to work at the fintech, and so I do know that Africa is actually a huge market for blockchain because they're underbanked, so they're not using any of the. A lot of them are not like even being banked by traditional banks. So blockchain is a huge thing there. Can you comment on two of those things? So how progressive they are in terms of centralization, and B, the blockchain, because I've also heard about the examples of carbon projects that exist on the blockchain.
Yeah, so the digitalization that I was mentioning before, I would say that this is the simplest digitalization. But what I was talking about, it's more of the how the processes in the government institutions are carried out, because still this is a lot of paperwork, and that could be possibly replaced with the e-government services, etc. But you touched a very great points, and I think that Africa, and especially East Africa, there are a lot of good developments in the centralization into the blockchain as well, because that's completely true. A lot of people are unbankable, so also with our project, if you really want to pay out people their benefits, or how do we really make those payments if the person is unbankable, illiterate, for example. This is also a big part. What kind of applications we can use for the data collection on the ground, because not only we are looking at as a satellite monitoring thing, but for the benefit sharing monitoring, for impact monitoring, there are a lot of things that we need to report. So how we can, for example, engage with our local team operations who are on the ground, what kind of applications they can use, so we can collect the data from the local communities. Sometimes these communities are challenging, I would say. They don't have access to the internet, so meaning that there's a time period where the data can be uploaded. What do we do if they are illiterate? How do we collect data from those people? So these are the issues along the way, where I see when we really want to talk about the real digitalization in the country, what we need to take care of.
I see. And if we look at it from the other perspective, like, would you say that any of the, for example, recent policies or regulations, especially on international level, would they actually help advance the carbon projects in there, or they're even broad blocking them even more at this point?
So my personal view is that they help advance, because also during 2 years when I have been in, for example, in Uganda, then I see a lot of good developments and discussions happening in the Ministry of ICT, and different entities, NGOs, developing. But of course, if we want to do a real change in a country regarding these topics, there needs to be a monetary allocation for the ICT sector to really, I would say, to craft local intelligence regarding what is needed, what are the next steps, and how much money, for example, is needed to create awareness to the local levels. Because I see that from the leadership side, there are great leaders who can really make changes and implement new technologies, but that's not only about them. So we really need to translate these changes to the smallest level, and I would love to call it the bottom up. So how do we approach bottom up in East Africa? There is still missing the awareness, climate financing, what they could use to really make this change.
Would you say what would you say are the main types of carbon projects that you have seen developing in East Africa?
Um, for the mostly, of course, it's cookstoves, energy projects. We see agroforestry is very popular because East Africa has a very great weather conditions. Of course, we have climate challenges because the weather is unpredictable. So the farming also need technologies, um, advices to make farming actually possible nowadays. But cookstoves, energy, agroforestry, afforestation, a little bit avoidance, red plus.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the cook stoves? Because I think we very often, I mean, we as a satellite company, we mostly just deal, with the natural assets. And I don't think people who listen to our podcast have heard often about the cook stove. So it would be great if you could take like a bit of a deeper dive into that.
Yeah, so cook stoves is used as a carbon project in very often in East Africa because the local ways how the food is cooked, it's using the firewood. So actually, the deforestation rates in East Africa is very high. Chocolate market is extremely big, and I would say that it's completely black market. And to approach this, of course, cook stove projects are very welcomed because that's another solution how the families could address the cooking without cutting the trees in the nearby regions. Still, I think it's very not risky projects, but they acquires a lot of operational management because it's very hard to change people's habits,
Right.
also the way how they cook, and by speaking with local communities a lot, also northern Uganda, when we have our bamboo project, we see the deforestation rates are high, and people use firewood because that is the way how they like to have their food. So regarding the cookstove projects, yes, you can calculate what actually each household avoids of cutting down the timber, but still, there's a lot of operational engagement with those communities to really explain and have a long, sustainable achievement in the region because it's very hard to change people's habits. Sometimes we see those cook stoves ending up in a black market because this is a short-time mindset. We
Okay.
want just to sell the cook stove to get a fast cash. So that means that the projects are facing a lot of outside risks, but it's not impossible. It is possible, but of course it requires a lot of time, engagement, awareness, etc.
And like you said, like a behavioral change, which is, I think, one of the
Mm-hmm.
hardest things to achieve.
True,
In your
true.
experience, do you think what is the what is more impactful? Just a straightforward red plus project, which is like simply protecting a piece of forest, or doing the cook stoves, which basically protects it indirectly.
Yeah, well, I would say that every action is needed. We cannot. I'm totally a believer that we cannot put the prioritization in on a project. We need direct air capture. We need cook stoves. We need afforestation. We need red plus. So there's no questions which is basically better or which is worse. Because as well from our perspective, yes, we are establishing new bamboo plantations. By our plantation fire monitoring and bamboo actually also provides sustainable timber along the way, we can decrease risks on different natural habitats around our projects. The same way we need cook stoves because still we want to also teach the communities also around our projects that what is the way how you cook your food. Cook stoves is better way how to cook it, not just to chop down the trees. So definitely everything is needed. The way how you set it up, the way how each well, let's be honest, each carbon project is very big amount of capital invested in a different region. So I would say that maybe we can look at the return of investment and what is the impact, because we love to talk about carbon project impact beyond carbon sequestration or beyond saving. So what is the real impact also for the local communities, social wise, monitoring wise, so what it has created.
Do you have any good, I would say maybe like a framework on making sure the local communities actually benefit from the projects in the region?
Yeah, well, I think I would love to praise my team in the One Empty Nation. We are on a mission that we really want to understand what the local community needs. Yes, through our foundation, we have 5 pillars. We want to promote education, health, sustainable agriculture practices, safety for children and crops, so access to the water and solar energy. But still, when we are entering the new area, we are holding a public participation. It's called Baraza. In this public participation process, we are scoping out with the local leaders, with of course with the landowner and alongside the community, which is affected by the project. So they are actually scoping out their needs because there's no need for us to invest in a maybe new school room if they need water and if they rank water as a first priority. So we in our team, we totally believe that we need to listen to the community and they need to prioritize their needs at first, because what we think would go good for them, maybe it's not the case. And also with our bamboo project in northern Uganda, yes, community listed their needs. Water is the first priority. It's already done. The water infrastructure is put in a place in a sustainable manner, and it's the water is now open to nearby people, and they're very so I would say that they benefit already a lot.
So you mentioned bamboo quite a few times. What is, I guess, the carbon sequestration, carbon capture capacity of bamboo compared to other tree species?
So we can say it's very similar to mangroves,
Okay.
very similar. Bamboo is very good in terms of the carbon capture. Of course, we have a local intelligence. We are using only native or naturalized species in East Africa. That's why we have we call it the site species matching tool. When we are looking at the land, we want to also look at exact species which will be growing very well in the area. We have mosaic approach, meaning that we in our forestry plans we use first of all different species, and second of all along the way we are also implementing biodiversity monitoring practices as part of the uh, leaving local ecosystem in between the plots, and also planting flourishing trees, etc. But in terms of the bamboo, that's the way how we are calculating in our carbon project the carbon capture only from the sites where the bamboo is.
Okay. And now that you brought up biodiversity, so compared to, for example, local community benefits, how high does it rank in terms of the actual benefits that come out of the projects?
Oh yeah, well, this is an interesting question, and I would say that first of all, we need to understand the baseline. Sometimes in the market, I see that the projects actually don't assess the baseline, and I would say that the baseline assessment is not only for the environment, what is on a land that we are approaching, because yes, we are nature based, meaning that we are working directly with the land, but still we need to also assess the baseline regarding community, about social, economic aspects in the region when our project is, because that's the way how we can calculate and monitor really the sustainable development goal contribution to the region. So sometimes that's missing, and that's what, for example, in our operations, what we really are approaching on a high level. For this to be on a good quality, we definitely need inputs from the local universities and academia, because they are actually the most powerful bodies who have access to a lot of data already. And I think in Africa we don't appreciate that much, but uh, I am I have seen a lot of great researchers developments, and also experts in each of the countries, in Uganda, in Kenya, Tanzania, and we are very happy to work together with them and to create something meaningful.
This was going to be my next question. Basically, how do you assess the baseline of biodiversity? But obviously, if you have insights to that, do you think it differs largely from other geographical markets? As in, like the universities hold this kind of like key to the Pandora box of biodiversity, or is it kind of similar in other markets?
Yeah, I will maybe a little quickly address your topic regarding accessing the biodiversity. We use also Orbify as a tool for addressing it, and it's a great one. And then, of course, for the real case study, we use also local operational teams who are working together with the people in the region to really assess the habitat, to really report what is on the grounds, what kind of animals, mammals, bird species, insects we have, what is the soil quality at the moment. This is where we need local academia help to really carry out in-depth soil analysis. And so getting back to your question, if you can remind me of it, what was
I was
the?
basically asking, so I think this a little bit goes hand in hand with like the lack of digitalization in the region, right? So you have to rely
Mm-hmm.
on some of the local research and academia institutions to provide you with that data. Do you think it's a common challenge in other markets, or is it like very specific to the East Africa?
I'm a little bit. It's quite hard for me to comment, for example, Indonesia or LatAm. I would say, I hope to say that it looks like similarities in some of the aspects that we are having. I think for a lot of carbon project developers who are actually engaged into the land or nature-based solutions, they are actually like on the front right hand of the digitalization, because the data that we have been collecting, even if it's from the operational teams on the ground, we are the ones who are digitalizing them, putting on chain or
Okay.
whatever the format is. So I would say that it looks like a lot of similar projects like us is actually at the start of the digitalization or using technology in the regions where they was not doing it. So meaning that we can be the first ones where actually also local public sector could gain insights a lot, and we are more than happy to provide this kind of knowledge.
Let's imagine for a second that somebody from, say, I don't know, UN or WWF is listening to this podcast. What would be like an immediate few things that you could ask of them to say, we really need X, Y, and Z to make sure the market is advancing with the speed that we need it to advance?
Yeah, well, we need climate financing. We need to really, for each country, we need to understand what kind of solution would be the best, because not every country is on the same risk category in East Africa. So, yes, we need extensive amount of capital. Yes, we need investors. How can us as a project on the ground, how can we approach the financing institutions, investors? What kind of technology we need, what kind of reports, etc. I think UN already has done a lot of great things in the region. I really see a great work what they have been doing together with the local governments, but this needs to be translated to the project level, to the ones who are very really developing it. So case studies. Specific targets, what we can do. So in a 3 months time, for example, we could assess new maybe financing product, so we really could scale up to de-risk operations in Africa. So this is basically the things that could be a great help from their side.
And if we look on the other side, basically, how can we? I think because the whole like greenwashing is the problem of the entire VCM, and as far as I understand, it's like also like the big factor in the capital being gained from private sector. Are there any like immediate steps that could be taken to basically reassure the capital providers, that their money will be spent in the best way possible and there is actually going to be impact?
Yeah, well, I think the MRV is the first one, as openness, as open as transparent we can be about the real project operations, about the real engagement with the community, about the benefit sharing, about the baseline assessment. That's the first step. So yes, we are first. For example, we are using Orbify as a tool to provide insights to our carbon credit buyers for the locations where we are at. And this is the first step for bringing up the trust in the market and avoid the greenwashing. The most transparent we can be, the most easy access we can get to the project data, the most basically the better the market will be scalable.
Right. I feel like it will also like eliminate the shady players in the market who do all of those unreliable projects and who are to blame for the lack of trust in the whole market.
Definitely, definitely. So project developers definitely have a very important role to play. We need to be a step further, actually, and do a lot more. to really prove that our actions is on a good path, not only from the investor perspective, but the mostly from the also community and local people perspective. Because as a nature-based solutions, we are implementing something on the ground, meaning that we need to make sure that we are not doing harm not only for the environment, but also not for the society as a whole. So in those cases, the publicity, meaning that openly discussing the projects, providing accessibility to the project's data is the first thing in all of the actions.
Gotcha. So with all of the topics that we've just discussed, what would be your like outlook for the carbon market in East Africa for the foreseeable future?
Well, by not giving any hard statements, unfortunately. I would love to see that the carbon markets in East Africa are growing, then that we would see um, a good part of the global climate financing flowing really into the East Africa. We see and hear a lot of great commitments, but when you really need to make the transaction, it's actually not so easy to do. Yes, the carbon regulations are not there out yet in the different countries in especially East Africa, but still we have very nice projects in East Africa, which requires trust and then also climate financing. So we really need to get the ball rolling.
Right. I think we had a very productive conversation, and I think we covered a lot of interesting topics. I think it would be good for us to wrap it up by touching upon the upcoming event that you guys are hosting in Uganda in May, so the Carbon Market Forum. Can you, and we are, by the way, a proud supporter and sponsor of the event. I'm personally looking forward to going there. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about what the event is about, for whom it would be great to attend, and how they can attend or sponsor it?
Yes. So first of all, thank you Orbify for sponsoring us and supporting us on a mission. Yes, we are organizing East Africa Carbon Markets Forum in Uganda, in Kampala, 9th and 10th of May this year. We have 2 days full of agenda with discussions regarding the climate regulations, upcoming climate regulations in East Africa. Then we also will be also delving into discussions regarding the climate financing, what kind of solutions we could work in East Africa, and also from the technology part, what kind of technology we could use on a country based, on a project based, to really make sure that the projects are on a high quality, to really make sure that we can de-risk and also make the climate financing happen. I'm very happy that we have different stakeholders already sign up and also partnering with us on this great mission, because we are all in the same boat. So to really scale up East Africa carbon markets, we need a lot of different stakeholders by one table in one room to really access and also discuss, for example, targets, what we need to achieve in upcoming 3-6 months to make things happen and the ball rolling and really prove the trust of the voluntary carbon market itself. We already have different players from the different countries who will be sharing, speaking, making workshops, and I'm very, very excited and looking forward. So everybody who would love to attend, they can definitely visit East Africa Carbon Markets Forum website and sign up for registration. We will have a screening committee soon to approve all the registrations, because we have limited the capacity in the room, and we need to make sure that we have diverse audience in the place. And by saying that, just we will keep you posted.
Great. So if you are a carbon credit developer or a technology provider, I think it will be a great place for you to be, guys. if you're obviously a supporter of transparency in sustainability, which is what I think we're all trying to do here, I think it would be great together there. All right, guys, I think this is it. This is a wrap. Thank you, Annette, so much for joining the podcast. I think it was a great episode. And by the way, guys, Annette is also going to be a guest speaker at our upcoming webinar that's happening on March 12th, that is going to go over rapid feasibility assessment or screening for carbon projects, and we'll also delve into the specifics of the carbon projects in East Africa. So as usual, all the links are tagged below, so if you want to check out the forum or 1 Million Three Nations website, everything is linked, and you can also connect with Annette on LinkedIn. Her profile is also tagged below. All right, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.